All right. That's probably there it is. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Popcast on the Rocks, Spoilercast edition. We'll be getting into Doom Patrol Season 1, episodes 4 and 5. So hopefully you're watching along with us,
Mhm.
or maybe you've already seen them all, and we'll get to that just a little bit later in the episode. Otherwise, a Wednesday night. How are you doing this Wednesday night? Injured foot girl.
I'm doing a heck of a lot better. As you were obviously notified earlier this evening
Oh,
via our Apple Watch spy technology, I went on a bike ride and that went well. Um, Definitely like at the end, I pushed it a little bit, and as I was kind of coming back, I felt a little like strain in my foot, but I would say for like 90% of the ride, it was good. So
okay.
yeah,
Nice.
getting some
Well,
activity, getting back out there.
yeah, it's pretty good. Pretty good sign of of good things happening, good healing happening. A
That's
little bit of
right.
Wolverine healing factor kicking in.
God, that'd be nice. Yeah,
Yeah.
I told a couple of my coworkers what happened to me, and they just had very visceral reactions. Normally they're not very expressive people, but the
Oh
second
yeah.
you say something like "I stepped on a nail," I feel like people tend to feel it, and their faces were just like, "Ooh," and I was like, man, I
Yep.
mean, I know it was bad, but it somehow makes it seem worse to see other people's reactions. So,
Yep.
but
I we normally don't really see our producer on the screen, so I see him now. I get to see his reactions to things, and I get yeah. Cheers. And so you had me worried there. It's like, can he hear the audio? He's like checking for the audio or something. So I was like
oh,
freaking
sure.
out for a moment.
Well, at least if
Um,
we couldn't hear the audio, it'd be only my, gross foot stories. So,
oh, okay. Hey, we'll take a girl's foot story any day, I guess. There are limits, though. There are
yes.
limits.
Yes. I wasn't, I don't think, too descriptive. So,
Well,
but
anything else of note going on?
no, not really. I mean, with an injured foot, I haven't really gotten out anywhere. So just sitting on the couch binging, not too
Okay.
much different than my normal life.
Yep.
But how have you been?
Um, good. Warm. Got more rain. Um, I've been a little bit. It hasn't happened to me in quite a while. Where I used to read a lot, and there's definitely something to getting sucked into a book,
Mm-hmm.
um, and how that kind of takes over your thoughts, and I don't know, like uh, my attitude will even almost conform to what I'm reading. Like it just is a very pervasive to what to the way things are, whatever, in your day to day when you're really into it.
Sure.
And I got back into a manga, which I can barely call reading because there's very little dialogue.
True.
But way way back in the day, when we had in our local town some variant of a Sam Goody, they changed names a lot.
Oh my
Um,
goodness. That brings back
yeah,
that brings back childhood memories. Woo, dang. I can see the neon now.
Sam Goody. They were like, was Funkoland the same thing? Like there was like I think it changed name 3 times.
Yeah,
Um,
Suncoast, yep.
Suncoast, yep.
Oh my god.
So I don't know which variant this
FYE.
was.
Oh my gosh, I remember that so much. Yes. They had like the little periods in between the letters, and I don't know why I remember that. Yeah. Just lit up in neon weirdly.
But I had manga was a little newer to me, and I had run into this one that caught my eye, and it's
Okay.
called. I always called it Blame. I guess it's Blam. No, it's Blam.
Oh, okay.
So or Buramu in Japanese, I guess.
Mhm.
But it's this kind of cyberpunky thing where the art just really, really sucks me in.
Okay.
The entire landscape is this giant city, but on a scale you've never seen before. It's like this everybody's existence that they've known for centuries is nothing but a city. They don't even understand what the concept of land is or
Sure.
sky. They're just encased in a mega city.
Sure.
And there's humans left, but there's also like silicon life, and there's these safeguards that are like these kind of machines that are set to guard things and whatever. Anyway, it's this
Hmm.
world that I just can't get enough of, and
Sure.
I recommend anyone check it out. Um, Tsutomu Nihei is the author, and it's just great. So
So,
that's what I've been up to. I've been like absorbed in this manga series.
sure. So, three things that I thought of when you were saying that. One, the whole like encased in a city definitely reminds me of Coruscant on Star Wars.
Mm.
You know what I mean? Like the whole planet is like a city. That's just sort of like immediately like the visual that I got.
This is another level because
Okay.
Coruscant, you can see, you're in a ship and you can see the sky, you can leave the planet, you're aware that
Sure.
this
There's
city,
other. Yeah.
yeah, and it's an awareness. This is like if you were, like I think the Bane says, I was born and raised in darkness or something like that. This is
Okay.
basically you were born and raised, but your whole family has been for centuries and countless generations in knowing nothing but steel and concrete and twisty and windy, pipes and whatever. Like they
Sure.
talk about. I should share some. That's why I was testing the screen sharing thing. I was like, I wanted to share some of the art to like
Yeah.
get visual of it because there's nothing that I've seen that really compares. I get sort of a vibe of I forget his name, Geiger, that does the Alien art originally.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
There's some of that in there, kind of.
Sure.
Um, but I just can really feel this world. And I've been. Do you listen to music when you read at all, ever?
Depends on what I'm reading. If it's something new, then generally no. If it's something like I'm rereading, then yeah.
Okay. Well, I often like to, and so my second plug in my what's new. Here's my long what's new segment because I just have to rant about these two things that let everybody
Sure.
know. Um, so in my search for something to listen to really like put me in the mindset of this, I
Hmm.
found this music label called Cryo Chamber.
Okay.
So you can go to cryochamberlabel.com and they have a YouTube page and you can just listen to stuff. And so they have albums like Raptured World, Interplanetary. It's called Beyond the Ghost, Eternal Drift, um, Dead Melodies, The Master Plan, like these very ethereal, creepy. There was a Cthulhu one,
Nice.
all kinds of stuff. And it just sets this like bleak, oppressive, but yet with a sense of awe
Hmm.
at the sheer size and scale that's presented in the manga.
Sure.
So that's what I've been up to.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, kind of the going off of that, the second and third things that I thought of when you were talking about that, like I lately, Chris and I have been super into listening to the Dresden Files, like the audiobooks,
Mm-hmm.
because Peace Talks is coming out this month, 2 weeks, June 15th or July 15th. So excited. If you can catch up on the book series because it's so so good. It's by Jim Butcher. Um, but so that's what we've been kind of like intensely obsessed with. Like we've been in the car listening to audiobooks and then playing cribbage, listening to audiobooks of that. Um, so that's, when you said you were kind of deep into, back into reading in a sense, like we are kind of too. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but then also when you were talking about the title, how you read it as blame, but apparently it's blam. Like
Yeah.
that just kind of got me thinking about how like when you read, sometimes you just like get things stuck in your head and they're like pronounced a certain way in your head. And then
Yes.
other people say them and you're like, no, that's wrong. Stop it. Like, uh.
Absolutely.
So we're listening we're listening to the audiobooks of the Dresden Files, and the guy who's doing the reading is saying some of like the spells and stuff out loud. And I'm like, would
Mm.
you quit it? You're not pronouncing it right. Like every time he says a spell, it's like the wrong way that I've been pronouncing it in my head.
Mhm.
So I'm getting super stuck on his pronunciation. Like, luckily, the spells aren't like every page or something, but yeah, it's
Well,
hard when you get it, like, it's so fixated and it's so like the way you read the series and then somebody says
mhm.
it and you're like, no, that's not it.
Well, I even get kind of like, our brains fill in so much information all the time.
Yeah.
And when you're reading, you might complete a sentence, Wingardium Leviosa.
It's
Yeah,
Leviosa, not Leviosa.
exactly. um, when I get it where I will, especially in the kind of books that I've read and a bunch that you've read, I'm sure too,
Yeah.
that are very science fiction or fantasy, and
Mhm.
the attempt to create names and places that are
Yes.
quite foreign. Um, I don't even, my mind doesn't even try to read it sometimes. It's
Sure.
literally like if you're going to remember a kanji, you're
Mhm.
remembering it as an image, basically.
Mhm.
And so your
Yep.
mind is just, I know that series of letters, and that's that thing, and that's it. So it just goes by. So if someone asks me how to say it, I maybe have never said it to myself ever before. Uh,
Sure. Yeah,
so
and then
I
you
don't
like
know.
hear it out loud and like, yeah, you're just like, "Oh,
Oh, that's how it is. Or okay,
yeah,
yeah.
for sure."
Yep.
Yeah, it's funny how, like silently reading something, we can interpret it in different ways. Like I said, we
Mhm.
can read it and hear it in our minds, and it's like we can hear the pronunciation in our minds, or like you said, it's just like an image and you just sort of like don't
Yep.
associate, you skip right over it, but then somebody says it and it's
Yep.
like, "Oh, like it's so foreign."
Yep. It's so important to particularly like romance novels, I think. Um, w- w-
Is that like the
well,
core, the staple of your reading collection, John? Your
oh
romance
yeah, for
novels?
sure. No, so I've read all shame point in my life, I guess. I've read all the Twilight books. So
Oh, I share in that shame,
eh,
don't worry.
um but it's one of those things where you can write some, it's part of the reason when we talked about Violet Evergarden, there's things that you can say in a letter or in the written form
Mhm.
that kind of can speak to the heart or like sound really impactful when you're just saying it to yourself.
Mhm.
But if you sit and read it aloud, so I had to
Yep.
imagine romance novels don't do well as audiobooks
Yeah, I
because
doubt
if
it.
you're going to sit there and have someone read it to you, a lot of that
Yeah.
stuff is going to not sound good. It's not
It's
going to
not
sound right.
sexy.
No, it's
Yeah.
not at all. So I don't know. I hadn't thought of that until this moment, but I feel like that probably doesn't work very well.
Mhm.
And it's part of the issue that I think like episode 2 encounters Star Wars.
Yeah,
You write that stuff, maybe it sounds good in your head, but as soon as you hear someone say it, you should like revolt and be like, oh
absolutely.
no,
Yep.
can't do that.
Yeah, it's honestly why, to sort of take it back into like a more practical, boring application. It's honestly why in grad school I would read so many of my papers aloud, especially my thesis,
Right.
because you find when you write something, like it just works and it flows and your brain just like translates the gaps and you're thinking like, "Oh, this is
Yep.
great." And then you sit and read it aloud and you're like, "Oh no, like I'm making huge logic leaps and, this just
Yep.
doesn't sound the way I want it to go." So,
Mhm.
that can be very
Even
helpful.
yep. Even in text messages, just often I'm too
Yeah.
lazy to fix it. I'm like, oh, that didn't really sound right, but we're gonna go with it.
Right.
Yeah. Well, anyways, that's that. Are you drinking some fun things tonight?
I am. I'm drinking something very different. So we already went through, June 30th was Mai Tai Day.
Mm-hmm.
Um, didn't have any interest in participating in that. Today is wine cooler day. I have zero
Mm-hmm.
also interest in participating in that because that's just to
Mm-hmm.
me like bottles of sugar that you can drink.
Yep.
Um, so tomorrow I found is anisette day, which is
Okay.
a liqueur made from anise. So I don't quite have that, but I found in the back of our liquor cabinet, we had Sambuca, which is also made from
Mm,
anise, and we had black Sambuca, which is a
okay.
little bit different. So I was like looking up online. I was like, oh, I'm kind of participating in this day. What can I make with black Sambuca? And I found a drink called a Black Widow. So it
Oh,
has,
well, that
yeah,
sounds cool.
right. So I was like, oh, I obviously have to make this. And luckily it was like pretty simple, all things I had just kind of floating around. So it's black Sambuca, vodka, and then you need like a raspberry or berry liqueur. They recommend raspberry or blackberry. So, and my dad
Okay.
makes, he just like dropped off a bottle. My dad makes liqueurs. So he
Oh,
just
wow.
dropped off a bottle of
So
blackberry liqueur.
that's a good
So,
coincidence.
yes. So this is my Black Widow going on right here.
That's pretty awesome. It does look
Yeah.
dark.
It is, yeah. It's the black sambuca there. So it tastes pretty good. It's definitely like better than drinking black licorice, but it's
Hmm.
sort of got a little bit of that hint. Like that's sort of what I feel like a little bit. So, but
Yeah.
it's fun.
I,
It's also very
I feel
like
like I could.
Halloweeny.
Yeah. Oh, we're gonna get a Halloween store out by us. So yes, I'm excited.
Nice.
I feel like I should be taking a, you know, cheers and shot with you because I've had this on my desk for a bit. That's that rabbit stuff before,
Yeah.
and this is very like, black licorice, star anise kind
Yeah.
of things. So I could have done
See, there
that
you
too.
go. Get in the
Yeah.
spirit.
Yeah. No, yeah, get in the spirit. Puns, perfect. Um I completely disregard the days. I could have picked up a wine cooler today or something, but I didn't want to do that.
That's
So
okay. That's a smart choice. Like I said, they're just basically little sugar bottles.
hmm. Well, Ashley's been on a kind of kick of making agua fresca,
Oh, yeah.
different
Okay.
kinds. So we had a bunch of strawberries and she made a strawberry agua fresca. So
Yum.
I just put tequila in it and we're good to go.
Nice.
Seems like the tequila is my becoming my go-to here.
Hmm.
I don't know, like it has not been in the past, but
I feel like
liking
tequila
the
is
tequila.
very like summery, you
Yeah,
know?
right. Yeah.
It's
Yep.
yeah, it's refreshing. You can mix it with like, a lot of effervescent things or like summertime, I think like margaritas. So, yeah, I get you.
Yep. Yep. All right. Couple news stories you found before we get
Mhm.
into the main discussion.
Yeah,
Let's just
I mean, I'll go
find.
through them quick so we can check out Doom Patrol because I feel like I have lots to say because I loved these episodes. Um, but I just found there's a report about the first movie made entirely during quarantine coming out, or just like wrapping up production, and then they're shopping for, obviously a production company to purchase that and package it and market it. Um, but yeah, I just thought that was cool. Like, it's the first movie entirely made during quarantine, and it's not quite like some of the, like the TV reunion specials that I feel like we've
Hmm.
been seeing are all like, oh, we're based around Zoom calls and, everybody's
Yep.
on like the screen kind of thing. And it's not like production quality. This movie is actually like, yeah, some of it's over Zoom so we can get the actors together for certain scenes, but the majority of it is like the actors filming in their own homes.
Hmm.
So I think that's
So
quite
it doesn't
interesting.
take place over a call, like you say. It's not focused on that. It's like they use
Yeah,
the call to direct and set things up, but
right.
then it's filmed on
So yeah,
iPhones or something like that. Or
yeah, I'm not quite sure. They didn't get into like the specific equipment, but it was like, I mean, the actors were all responsible for like setting up their own equipment, doing their own makeup,
Mhm.
like basically the only thing, people could do is kind of the costumers could like order them, their costumes and send it to them. They were doing like Zoom calls for makeup tutorials. Directors would like watch the filmed scenes that they sent in and like give them notes and stuff. So yeah,
Huh.
I'm highly interested to see how this comes out. So the movie right now is called Untitled Horror Movie. So it's a
Okay.
horror movie,
Hmm.
which I mean I think lends itself to like a everybody's separate and segregated, in their own homes kind of thing. Like this movie works well for that, I think. So yeah.
Wonder if it's any good. We'll see if it gets distribution.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see how this turns out. Um, no like truly big names or anything, more
Yeah.
like
Right.
B-C list celebrities, but what the heck? I mean, it'll always have notoriety for, being the first movie to completely film during,
Yeah.
lockdown and stuff. So should be interesting. Um, and then the other story that I found, just because we've used Discord, of course, to film and record for this podcast and to meet. Discord just announced that they are expanding, and their platform is no longer going to be just for gaming and gaming chats and gaming related type things. It's just going to be like a broad social chat platform.
Hmm.
So they're going to
Yeah.
try and get more mainstream.
It's interesting. I mean, it's kind of
Mhm.
like it's a little. I mean, it's a little too late. I don't know.
Mhm. Yeah.
You know, Zoom came and sucked all the wind out of things. Businesses have been using Teams.
Mhm.
Individuals, I think they got a lot of people on. Whether it's Skype or FaceTime.
Even Google
Um,
Hangouts, I think is
yep,
more relevant.
yep. And then Discord. They've done well
Mhm.
targeting an audience and building a community around that. I guess if I hope this does anything, I hope it seems like they're when they mention like some accessibility and
Yeah.
simplification of many things.
Mhm.
So if they can manage to keep the deeper level things for more advanced users, but then they can have a potentially lighter, simpler interface and stuff for everybody else.
Right.
That will go a long ways, I think.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, I mean, I get
so,
why they're doing it, and I hope that it works out for them. Obviously, they're just kind of feeling like financially the need to expand.
mhm,
But yeah, it's kind of sad to kind of lose that sort of niche feel.
mhm. I'm sure they'll. I mean, who knows if it will actually pick up any steam in anything else other
Right.
than gaming. So it
Right.
may very well maintain that anyways. And as we've seen, we've used Discord for nothing to do with gaming plenty too. So it does work
True.
for anything else. They just really seems more of a marketing shift, like you say,
Yes.
rebranding.
Yes.
So
So yeah, I mean, I wish them well with it. I hope it goes well.
yep.
So, but yeah,
Yeah, because
just
you limit yourself and your audience. Obviously, if you're telling everybody we're for computer gamers, it's a pretty
right.
small audience. Like it's easy to, I follow plenty of streamers and all that stuff. It's like, oh, there's a lot of people and they make millions of dollars and they're all using this service and they have their own Discord servers and people join it. Like it's well used and all that stuff. But
Right.
that is a niche industry and all that stuff. So if it makes sense for them to expand and try to
Exactly.
get to other areas. So yeah, cool. Yeah, that's about it for news stuff. I mean, we not much happened. I mean, maybe I missed it. Not much happened this week in pop culture that I was super interested in. More rumors, more people doing videos on the rumors of Star Wars axing this latest trilogy and stuff. But
Mhm.
it's all just rumor stuff. So
Yeah, I was gonna say I saw a lot of theories flying around, whether it be like you said about Star Wars, additional things about Michael Keaton returning as Batman, which I
mhm.
do want to address. I think in our full episode, just because we were
Okay,
so into it last week. Um,
yeah.
and I think somebody made a salient point that we sort of talked about in the sense of like the DCU has been having trouble with their timeline, what's canon, what's what's our established timeline here.
Mhm.
So somebody made a point about that I think we should get to for sure.
Okay.
But
Nice. Well, spoiler time.
that's right.
Spoiler for Doom Patrol season 1, episodes 4 and 5. We'll get into that now.
Mhm.
Episode 4. What'd you think? Things
So
got nuts.
they did. And I just like before like I get into the individual episode, I think it ended up working out perfectly that we decided to do 2 episodes at a time
Mhm.
and that these 2 were the ones that we
These 2 were
packaged
the ones.
together.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's pretty lucky.
Yeah,
I
I
didn't think
mean,
about that, but
right. I mean, we totally could have split them up if we'd started out like thinking like, oh, we should watch 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and stuff like that. So yeah, this worked out perfectly because of course this was like a 2 season or a 2 episode little arc here.
yeah.
As Mr. Nobody, fourth wall breaks and points out. Um, but starting with the first one, I loved pretty much like everything about this episode, like getting into it. Obviously, we both noted right away that we're introduced to a new character,
Yep.
Crowley.
Yep. I don't remember
um,
his name in the show, but it's
so it's,
Crowley from
I know,
Supernatural.
I totally couldn't think of
It's
him as
like
anything but
Wilbur or
Crowley.
Wallaby or
Willoughby.
Willoughby. Okay.
Willoughby Kipling. So they call him
Yeah.
Kip, which is like a little bit easier, but still, like,
Mhm.
I don't care how easy you made it, he's still Crowley. Um, and of course, his character brings in a different element. We've been kind of dealing with these like, you know, supernatural entities and supernatural occurrences, like something kind of different. But now Crowley brings in like we're dealing with religion and we're dealing with
Mhm.
like, directly religious aspects, when we're fighting a group
Mhm.
of people that are trying to end the world. It's the apocalypse and it's a religious apocalypse. So that was
Did
quite interesting,
um
I thought.
did it feel to you like um an adult entered the scene?
Yes, for sure.
Because when you think about their pasts, we've got one that was committing adultery and not being a great father,
Hmm.
really into himself. You had another one that was committing adultery, and trying to escape
Oh, Cliff, yeah.
his. Well, then yeah. So and then the other one, and then
And Larry, yeah.
Larry. Yep. Um,
Yeah, I was like,
trying
you,
to
you
escape his
described them
reality,
both
escape.
actually
I
in
know.
that.
Yeah. But they were both being selfish in their own way, you
Yeah.
know. And then um, and then Rita, who was very into herself, very kind
Yeah,
of spoiled
self-obsessed.
sort of Hollywood actress. And then you've got Jane, who quite literally is very young
Mhm.
and went through a lot of rebellious stuff and never
Right.
really left that phase necessarily. And
Mhm.
then Vic, who also is very young and is dealing with daddy issues. So to me, Crowley or Kip comes in, and
Mhm.
yeah, he's the adult in the room, and
Absolutely.
he like kind of knows what's happening, knows
Mhm.
what needs to happen, and has to wrangle everybody to try to get that to happen. So
Yeah, I feel like the last episode Cyborg came in and even though he was like a teenager and we saw him be very teenagery in terms of like interacting with the rest of the members of the Doom Patrol, he seemed a little bit more together just because
mhm,
he'd had more experience like, you know, here's I'm going to define my mission, here's my mission, here's how I'm going to execute it, let's go and I have a plan. But
mhm,
now here in this episode, I felt like he took a step back, even though he's striking out on his own without his father. I felt like he took a step back in terms of, every time he was trying to say like, we're a team, this is our plan, this is our mission. It felt like he was
mhm.
trying to convince everybody, and he was really trying to work hard to be like, oh, what would the Justice League do, and what would Superman do,
Yeah.
and what would you know what I mean? He was like trying real hard to
Mhm.
be an adult and he just like wasn't quite hitting the right note.
He
So
has a wide-eyed, I just blanked on the word, but it's like a wide-eyed idealism, you
yeah, like
know.
a naivete. Hmm.
Yeah. And so Kip comes in and definitely has that, brings the realism.
Yeah,
And
he's got some
like,
experience.
yeah. And you have a lot of notes here, but
I
one
do.
that on this topic that kind of came up was, I think it was in for this episode, like what is okay to do, you know? So the idea is here they have to kill this kid, and that saves the
Hmm.
world. And so obviously the wide-eyed idealist, you know, and Vic would be absolutely not. You know, we're the heroes.
Hmm.
We're a hero. That's how we're going to
Right.
define it. And whereas you have the, I guess, the realist, or if you want to say the cynicist, whatever, you know, comes in and says, nope, let's end this because that means the world's done. You
Right.
know, so
Yeah, I mean, he does at least give it a go, the idea that like we can save the world. He's not just like from the get-go like we need to kill this kid. He's like, "Listen, I'm going to give it my best shot, but I'm not going to lie, if this best shot breaks down, I see this as
mhm,
our only viable alternative."
mhm,
So, yeah, he's very much a pragmatist in
yep,
that sense. So, yeah. Yeah, he makes the Doom Patrol kind of face up to some hard choices. Doesn't
mhm,
always, go well. Um, but definitely forces some growth moments, I think, especially in these two episodes for Rita. I mean, she really kind of comes into her own in
yes,
these two episodes and like focuses on something besides herself. Kind of gets a little bit better handle on her powers as we see her, really become Elastigirl, like you said,
mhm,
kind of like almost Mr. Fantastic like when she stretches out her arm and pins Kip Crowley to the wall.
mhm.
um although that did confuse me a little bit just because I felt like it was very sudden of her to suddenly be in control. You know what I mean?
Well, because
Like the
I
the
took it
last
as
couple
in,
episodes, I kind of felt like she just like wasn't able
mhm,
to control it, and she like gets emotional and she's like, "Oh my god, like, I'm just breaking down." And suddenly she was like very specific, like, "I can just grow my arm." So,
yep. It's, I mean, I look at it like, I mean, it's more common in, you know, a superhero thing or an anime or whatever, but it's one of those things where when the moment calls, the
mhm.
instinct for it takes over and you
Yeah.
succeed. It's kind of like when you're, you know, if you're playing basketball or volleyball or something like that, you pick your sport of choice and you start to your mind isn't so involved in it. You start to get
Mhm.
out of your head and you
Sure.
just get into the physicality of it, and all of a sudden you know you hit an amazing spike or whatever. You know, you
Yeah.
just get in that flow and you respond to the moment. And so that's what the way I took it is, like, she
Sure.
didn't think to do that. She just literally told
Did
me to
it.
stop, reached out, and it happened.
Yep.
And so I hope that that's then a growth moment that, whoa, you know, I can do this, you know, look what I'm capable of here. And
Mhm.
then, you know, working on, I'm sure she'll have times going forward where she'll now attempt to do that and her arm will just blah, you know,
Yeah.
or like explode out funny or something, you know?
Right.
So,
Yeah, the other interesting part of that, kind of arm reach out was her skin was smooth. Whereas before we've seen her and she's kind of this like melty, rough,
yep.
textured goo, where this
Hmm.
looked like cleaner and neater, more like, not to overdo it too much, but more like Mr. Fantastic, who's just like
Yep.
this smooth, clean rubber man. And, somehow it's weird, but it's okay because his skin is still smooth, whereas she, you know, dissolves into this like textury ooze that's not
Hmm.
pretty to look at. So
Yep. I
yeah, just
like
thought
it.
that was
I
interesting.
predicted it. I
Yes,
predicted
you
it. I
did. You
thought, you
called
know,
it.
and Ashley had that kind of spoiled for her or something at some point. She
Okay.
saw something online and was like, um, but but yeah, I'm happy about that. She still had her
Mhm.
moments like, I'm being a better person, damn it, you know, like it's like, okay, well, you know, don't be too full of yourself here.
I did think that
Um,
was funny though.
yeah, yep. But yes, I enjoyed her.
Mhm.
Um, I thought it was a little, uh, I guess, selfish again for Larry. as soon as well, I guess that's going in the next episode. We'll wait on that.
Okay.
We'll wait on that. Looking at some of the other notes, your 37 dimensions.
Yeah.
I know that's a
That
lot.
was yeah, quite a thing to learn just casually from Cyborg that there are 37 known dimensions. Um and the rest of the team just is like, "Oh, well, sure, why not?" So yeah, so I thought that was interesting. Obviously we've seen this dimension, we've seen Mr. Nobody's, perhaps, spoilers, John. Luckily we have the
Yeah.
spoiler thing up. Um yeah, that was an interesting thing we should definitely get into for next episode because I was just like, what? Um, but we see Nernheim, I think is another dimension. Wasn't exactly clear if that's like defined as another dimension. I think so. When they were talking about, the D creator turning his eye on the different
Right.
dimensions, and Nernheim would be the last one. So yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we're seeing a couple. So I'm just interested to see how many we will see. Um, I definitely wish Kip Crowley would have stuck around longer because his cool like way of opening like dimension doors, he just like rips a hole in,
Yes.
like a jagged hole in the kind of fabric of reality, I guess, and just
Yep.
like steps through it. That was
It's very
boss.
cool.
That was
He better
awesome.
be back. He better come back
Like
for sure.
all of his tricks I thought were so cool. You know what I
Yep.
mean? Like he like tosses a penny out and calls up Baphomet, and she's an oracle,
Mhm.
and she just like tells them all this cool stuff. And then he's got all these like pop culture weapons like Michelangelo's ashes, Janis Joplin's dental floss, the Beatles song lyrics are wards against evil, like random coolness. I don't know.
Yeah,
I liked
I
it.
know. He so if I was a good podcaster, I would have looked this up and done my research, but he's very
Okay.
John Constantine.
Yeah. Mhm.
So I wonder,
Yeah.
both are DC. I wonder if one was inspired by the other in any way
Sure.
or what. I mean, they both fight evil with magic. And your thing you mentioned earlier about often not having a religion involved, and that's very a
Mhm.
John Constantine thing, like the occult
Right.
and all that sort of thing. And um, I really appreciate that, and it made me think. It made me think. I wonder if Doom Patrol has ever partnered up with Justice League Dark, and if Constantine's ever
Oh,
showed up.
sure.
Because
Sure.
these are
It would make
very,
sense.
when you look at them, similar kinds of things.
Mhm.
Maybe Doom Patrol's a little quirkier, but
Right.
they both deal with the odd and the strange and the bizarre.
Yeah, I mean, in that sense, I would imagine that it's been done, or, at least could be done if it hasn't already, much in the
Yeah.
same way that like if you want to put it on like a, broader pop culture scale, like the Marvel Universe incorporated Guardians of the Galaxy, and they're very like quirky and offbeat, and like,
Yep.
they kind of had some weird stuff going on as compared when you looked at like the Thor and Iron Man and Captain America. So yeah, I feel like Doom Patrol is just kind of like that quirky group, like a little quirkier, sure, but the whole DCU is quirkier and darker.
Yeah. Yep, for sure. I mention this in the last episode? I think I learned this since. I was going to make sure to bring it up.
Sure.
Um, our friend Pete called out that this actually came before X-Men.
Oh, okay.
So where I was thinking that this was like someone seeing, again, me not doing my research, so it's very good. It seemed like someone have seen X-Men and then said, well, what if people didn't
Yeah.
have these such clean powers and all this stuff? Because, but that's not the case. It actually came out, Doom Patrol started first, I think by 3 months. So it was
Oh, wow.
close.
That is
It's very
tight.
close. So you can see the Doom Patrol people being kind of
Yeah.
peeved that they came up with really this structure first, this
Yeah.
mansion with a guy in a wheelchair that's like going to be a professor and like
Right.
teach all these people how to live and control their powers and stuff. And then, yeah, and then you have X-Men that
Right.
take. I mean, X-Men didn't do well right away, so I don't know how they managed, but side by
Yeah,
side. But
I guess, yeah, I mean, 3 months is so close that I have to imagine that somebody leaked something, or somebody
Well,
talked, or somebody had, because I mean,
it's
you
not a
can't say
novel
it's like
though.
you can't say it's like this, like somebody stole that idea, because I mean, really, how would you steal that idea, flesh it out into the world that is X-Men in 3 months?
I think you totally could. I think you
You think
totally could. I mean,
so?
I think superhero stuff, especially back
Uh,
in the day, was often like, you listen to Stan Lee talk about some of it, and there's not always an exact reason why someone has this power, how they got it. It's like,
sure,
well, yeah, gamma rays. Yeah. I mean, that's what did it, of course. There
sure.
wasn't any research into how this could possibly be a
Work,
reality
yeah.
thing. It just was like, we're thinking up fun things here. It's kind of like you're spitballing a D&D campaign and you put it
Mhm.
together and some of it works. And the initial X-Men stuff, especially if, first issue of Doom Patrol came out, and then maybe even the second issue, and you're like, this is great, we can have our own take on this, what do we want? Well, let's see,
Yeah,
we need an athletic guy, we got, so Beast, and someone that can
yeah.
fly, so we've got Angel, and then they can already take the professor, jump him
Right.
over, they already got the idea for the mansion, they have all these other things they can already take.
Yeah,
And it just, because comics are, can be written one issue at a time, you
true.
know
I was gonna say,
yeah,
yeah, I mean, they really couldn't take a whole bunch, but really, the essence of all you would need to take is the
like a
chief to the
yep,
professor and the mansion to house, people.
strange mutant people.
Right. Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. Yeah. I mean, that really
Sure.
is the core of it. And then you could
Yep.
just like build it however you wanted to from there. So yeah, I guess totally. I'd be
So, I
interested
mean, it'd
though
be
if we
interesting.
did look it up, like if there was anybody crossing over, you know what I mean, on teams, like if anybody,
Mm,
worked on both or anything.
yeah. Yeah, it'd be interesting to know more about it. I guess that definitely there were Doom Patrol fans that were upset.
Sure.
So that makes sense.
Legit.
Um, but yeah, it would be fun to know that story. And
Absolutely.
I mean, there's been all kinds of that, obviously, between DC and Marvel over the
Oh,
years.
totally.
You know,
Yeah.
who owns who, and we need to have our version of that character, and
Mhm.
that kind of thing.
Right.
So um but they could say, well, this is Rita that can be Mr. Fantastic came first, so I
Yeah.
took that, you know but you can't, you know copyright a superpower. you know
Yeah, I mean,
it's
you
like,
think of like how many shows revolve around superpowers, like it's just
mhm.
impossible. And at some point, like you can't think up a new one.
Yep, right.
So
You got to
that's
start.
actually kind of why I'm interested in Jane's character with her 64 personalities that have 64 superpowers. Like I thought it
Hmm.
was interesting that we got to meet a couple new ones, not necessarily their
Yes.
superpowers, but we got to meet new people. And I know this is jumping into episode 5 a little bit, so I can just briefly mention it, but I did laugh a little bit at her Dr. Harrison persona, and
Mm,
her superpower was her, like, charm and her manner, and
mm.
I thought that was really funny because it's not, like, a traditional superpower that we think of, so I immediately went to, like, Domino from Deadpool, where her superpower, she says, is she's lucky.
Yep.
And, like,
Mhm.
Deadpool laughs at her, and he's like, "That's not a superpower." And she's like, "Oh, trust me, it is."
You watch me, yeah. Hmm.
Yeah. So we kinda got the same thing here, both the episodes involve, like, these, cults that are built around these, like, charming personalities, and it is, like, I mean, it's sort of metaphorical, but they are superpowers, like, that can be a superpower when you can convince people what to do. I mean, there's a very fine line, I think, between charm and, like, a convincing manner and, like, being, like, mesmerized or being hypnotized or,
Yep.
something like that,
Yep.
that we might think of as, like, super.
It seemed like a base form of mind control.
Yeah, mhm,
Um, and I mean, we've seen that kind of thing. Like you mentioned charm. I didn't think of it that way, but yeah, it's like, I think Gambit is said to have a charm kind of
exactly.
element that it's the reason he can get all the ladies. But
He's got this lady.
Yeah. But yeah, I really liked Dr. Harrison as well. I love that moment
Yes.
when she first appeared.
Yes.
Um, like you say, that is in the next episode, but it's fine. She was a great addition, and it's one of those things where we talked about how it's a danger of her power is a danger because it can be
Mhm.
used as a solve all. But I
Mhm.
love the way it worked here,
Yes, I
because it was
agree.
quite an intricate plan to find this. It wasn't like I don't know. It still involved other things, and it
Mhm.
was original enough that um, I appreciated it. I like the
Yeah.
color, the shift of the eye color, and the streak in the hair. So
Yep.
the little subtle look difference.
Exactly.
Um,
Yeah,
that's great.
I thought actually, kind of jump back to episode 4, I thought that part of the reason that Dr. Harrison worked and it wasn't too much of, oh, this is like Deus Ex Machina, like thank goodness she
Mhm.
has this superpower because it's exactly what we need. Because we got introduced in episode 4 to Penny Farthing, another one of her personalities. We didn't see her superpower and she didn't really do a whole lot.
Yep.
So
She,
it's like not every one
yeah,
of Jane's personalities just like magically appears to save the day. It was like, "Oh, this is kind
right.
of
This
annoying."
one
I mean,
gets in the
it's
way, kind of. Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Hmm.
So I thought that was a clever like, kind of setup in the sense of like lowering our expectations as far as Jane's concerned and then in the next episode being like, "Just kidding, actually, she's exactly
Yep.
what we need."
She didn't come into Nurheim or whatever and turn into Fire Lady and start torching the place.
Exactly.
She kind of withered up and
Yep,
kind of receded into herself. Yeah.
exactly.
No, that's a good point. Um, let's see what other things we've got. That's a lot of oh yeah. So the battle stuff in episode 4
Mhm.
was great. Crowley having a flame sword. I didn't see
Yes.
it coming. I was like, yes, here we go.
Boss.
It's
That was
great.
so cool.
um, let's see. Da, 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 da. Yes, the Nornheim was really interesting. The world. I saw the snow globe, and it did cross my mind. It was like, maybe that's where they're at. So I
Oh,
was happy that
nice.
that paid off.
Good for
Um,
you, because I did not see that coming, and I thought that was, like, the best. I was so excited. I was like, "Oh my god, they're right there! They're in this tiny little snow globe, it's so great."
do you feel like do you feel like Kip just sent them in there to like get rid of a couple annoyances? Did he
Um,
actually have any hope that they were going to achieve the goal? It's like, guys, this isn't going to work,
yeah.
but I'm going to get a couple you out of my hair. This is the only chance you got. You can go ahead and try it. I'm going to set up a barrier, but you're going to fail, and I'm going to kill the kid anyways.
Yeah, I feel like no yes and no. I mean, I feel like it was the same with the plan to save Elliot. It was like, here's a shot in the dark, like maybe it'll work and I don't have to do the thing, but like in case it doesn't, here's like the really great, result of my backup plan. You know what I mean? Like I have a backup plan and it's still going to work, so it's still going to be fine. It's just really great if this like first shot works out because then I don't even have to do anything.
Yep.
So yeah, so I think it was just like a great side effect of like I hope it works. If it doesn't, the side effect is I get a couple of them out of my hair. That works for me too.
Hmm. I love how Cliff says in Nurnheim, how does this look familiar? Is this that one throwaway line quick? Yes, it does. You've seen
Yes,
it
it
on the
does.
desk.
Yep.
Um, I love the way they did that. And it's another thing that this show can get away with that I feel like
Mhm.
others don't or just won't take the risk on. It's very odd themed. Like you say, the people in there look like Death Eaters, but with toys. Like
Yeah.
kind of cartoony. It's very
They're like
it manages
flashlight
to be.
orb things instead of wands. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? They're just so
Yep.
weird. I feel like I played with this thing that they're holding. I can't even describe it. I feel like I played with it as a toy as a kid or something.
Yeah. It had like sparkles that spun around the top
Yeah.
when you turned it on. Yeah.
Like what the crap?
Hmm.
It was not
But
intimidating.
it's like it's like an effective dark humor kind of element because
Yeah.
you've got a lot of kind of goofy things, but then there's an odd creepiness about the
Mhm.
two sitting there very, very large, much larger scale with a deeper voice,
Yeah.
and the one with his throat slit. So it's just a fun juxtaposition that really fits the show,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of, the people that we initially met as Elliot, the chosen one for this cult of the D creator. He's the book of the unwritten book. He's like the is that what he is? Is
Oh,
it the
yeah.
unwritten book
Yep.
is what he's called?
Hmm.
So yeah, so we first introduced to them as his parents, and then we see them again in Nurnheim as
Hmm.
these like pseudo rulers in a
Yep.
cathedral, but they're also dressed, like as kind of court jesters and
Yep.
clowns kind of thing. So I thought that was a really interesting costuming choice. Um, you know, if it was trying to like convey a message of like, this is what you get for like believing in a cult so much that you like sacrifice your son, and yeah,
Hmm.
obviously the mom like slit her husband's throat. And they were kind of, they were like sitting there, and she's like, "Oh, this is our great reward, and the D creator has chosen us." And you may think, to Cliff, she's like, "You may think I'm a bad mother, but other people would say I'm a good steward of the unwritten book."
Hmm.
And then she's sitting there saying all of these things dressed as like a jester, which
Hmm.
traditionally is like a fool people mock and laugh
Hmm.
at and things like that. So I thought that was a very pointed costume choice.
I didn't see her, at least the way I saw it wasn't that she was a jester. I saw him as a jester being made the
Yeah.
fool of because he was the traitor and they're dead, and for all to
Hmm.
see, basically. And I saw her as like you know, I
Did
don't
you also
know.
see like Queen
I,
of Hearts from like Alice in Wonderland? Because I kind of got
yes.
that vibe a little bit too.
Yep. It just sort of the idea of like clear excess or what you would imagine your own pompous like self to be or whatever.
Sure.
Um, but yeah, she looks silly enough to be a jester for sure.
Hmm.
Um, but then was effectively creepy too when she reached down the
Yeah.
big long nail thing and she's just a
Creepy. Yeah.
giant. That's pretty cool. What? Yeah. So you touched on it there a little bit, but want to explain what your point here is about the roles that we play being more important, mother versus custodian, book debate.
Yeah. Yeah, so like I said, Elliot's mom, I don't know her name. I don't think we're given that here, but she says to Cliff when Cliff is like she's explaining what she did, and she's sacrificing her son. She killed her husband, her son's father right in front of him. And Cliff
Hmm.
is like, "My God, I thought I was a bad parent." And like,
Right.
you
Hmm.
take the cake. And she's like, "Well, you may see it as me being a bad parent, but other people might say that I'm a good steward." And she seems to be okay with the fact that like she's a bad mom because she thinks her role as the steward of the unwritten book is more important. So it kind of
Mm.
made me think of like, you know, what kind of different roles we play to the people in our lives and what roles we tend to think are maybe more important. Like
Hmm.
sometimes do I think it's okay to, be a bad daughter if I'm being a good wife? Or,
Sure.
do I have to make choices in the sense of like I'm being, um, a good coworker to somebody, but that means like, I'm
Mhm.
cutting, my personal life off in some fashion, and I have to like let
Yep.
somebody else down because so it's just kind of interesting to think of like what roles maybe do we consistently think of in our lives that are most important to us? And are we okay
Yeah.
sometimes sacrificing other ones because we take consolation in the fact that like this role, is my more important one?
Hmm. I definitely think that it's important to understand your priorities in
Mhm.
life, like be aware of those.
Yeah.
I guess the trick is to getting them to align to your actions to align with what you really feel your priorities are.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a lot of people would be, a lot of people might say, um, you think of traditional things in life. You think, okay, priorities. It's God, family, country, like whatever you want to, how you want to pick
Yeah,
your
yeah,
hierarchy,
totally.
but
Yeah, I get what you're
you
saying.
don't necessarily live by that.
Mm-hmm.
So do you need to reshift the way you live to align with your idealistic uh print just blanked on the word, your idealistic view of what your
Mm-hmm.
priorities should be, or
Right.
do you need to understand what your priorities actually are
Mm-hmm.
and be honest with what those are?
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
so like
and
if go ahead.
I was just gonna say, well, and like you brought up an interesting point, like what are your priorities maybe versus what are society's priorities? Because I think
Hmm.
society would tell this woman that how dare you be a bad mother? You know
Hmm.
what I mean? Like being a mother is so important, especially in like American society. It's like, the mother is this like glorified role that society has built up. And this woman, I mean, rightly or wrongly, obviously we need to look at context here, but this
Yeah.
woman, has said like, well, maybe I was a bad mother, but this was like my belief and my career in a sense.
Hmm.
And I chose to be better at that.
Well, it's an interesting thing. So like even our perspectives vary on that. Like you mentioned how you feel like the motherhood has been built up, particularly in America. And I
Hmm.
feel how it's been like motherhood is something that's exemplified or built up in a society a lot more in other societies than our own.
Yeah,
Like
I mean, I think it's
particularly in
reduced as of late, but like I just think of like, 1950s like nuclear family America was just
sure,
like some
sure.
of I feel like that's some leftover ideology that we're sort of like slowly evolving
Hmm.
beyond, but yeah.
Yep. Yeah, and everybody needs to it's interesting because society's morality, society's priorities are shaped by, it sounds obvious because it is the individual's priorities,
Yeah.
averaging out to what, and creating a thing. But often people think it's something to be wielded or controlled. Like we would
Mhm.
just adjust what our society's
Mhm.
standards or priorities are, and it's just not that. It's an
Mhm.
individual thing that eventually spreads or whatever community
Right.
shares or something like that. And that's definitely like the talk of I listen to a lot of people that talk about how religion would be so important to a society because it's a way to gather a few universal um,
Principles.
understandings
Yeah.
or truths, yeah, things to live by, and
Mhm.
um, that can shape a community and a country in positive or negative ways, But
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, it's interesting. I like the idea of like you say too, then the perception versus the reality, Like what do you put your and some
Yeah.
of the things you bring up too, like is it okay to be a bad daughter in a situation when you're, like what how your priorities stack up, if
Mhm.
you like if, I put my wife as number one, that's
Mhm.
so then everything else has to kind of fall underneath that. Um
Right. Well,
but
and it's a question broadly, but it's also a situation specific question sometimes, Like I think broadly that I would answer that, like Chris is my number one priority, but unfortunately, probably in some specific situations, like I haven't made that call. Sometimes I think like, and I mean, there's endless variations of like, specific circumstances that force you to, to like be like, oh, normally I would say this, but in this special instance, I say that. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely
well,
sometimes you make a choice.
and that's a debate there. Like, is it okay to adjust priority
Right. Yeah.
situationally, or is it then that you need to reevaluate what you feel your priorities are?
Right. Or have my actions like force this situation, like like say it's like, a choice between like, am I spending time with Chris or am I, working on a project? Is it like
Mhm.
truly out of my control, or, could I've been working on this project earlier and therefore not need to make this choice? So therefore, you know,
Mm.
somewhere subconsciously did I end up making a choice that,
Mhm.
Chris isn't my priority? It's like an endless sort of like philosophical question that I think you can dig into. And in the context of the show, it was almost this like throwaway moment, but
Mhm.
I felt like ended up being very significant.
I mean, I don't think there's much debate on the particulars of the instance in the episode, but it
Right.
does definitely lead to, like you say, you can use it to extrapolate into our own lives
Right.
and
Yeah,
different stuff.
it's a little more metaphorical, like when you think of it on an everyday level.
Hmm.
Obviously the show like points it out as like clear instances of right and wrong, but still in a way that like makes you think, a little bit, kind of makes you
Yep.
pause a little bit. So,
Well, so as you bring that up, then Vic gets
mhm.
into a little spat with the chief and
Yeah.
about right and wrong, black and white
Yeah.
form of the thing. It kind of goes to the expression of being naive early and stuff like that.
Mhm.
But how how do you think that went? How do you think that? Do you have anything to
Ye
add to that kind of what we learned from that situation, or?
yeah, I thought it was very strange actually. Because like we learn a little bit more about Vic, and like you said, his kind of naivete that the world is black and white and you can make a choice between good and evil. And again, I think it comes back around to that situation comes back around to uh, Kip Crowley, and his response is like, "Hey, I'm not going to judge. Like, I know the apocalypse makes for strange bedfellows." So he's got that more like pragmatic, realistic approach.
Hmm.
But in the end, Vic goes along with the chief's plan. Like we see him like sort of put up that resistance in that moment and say like, you can't do this. And then the next shot of him is like on the bus with everybody else being like, let's go, let's go get the
Hmm.
recreator and, go with this plan. And I don't know, I just thought it was sort of like so you just kind of gave in there.
Well,
You
what was Vic's? I don't remember what Vic's initial like real sticking point or complaint was in the situation. I mean, obviously he didn't. Wasn't it more about what he? It was more of a fight about Crowley, about Kip, more, and like I didn't know you associated with this kind of person. He was ready to just kill this kid. Like,
Yeah,
wasn't it
so
more about the past? I don't remember exactly. Wasn't it more about that and
yeah.
the chief being like, look, you probably doomed the world?
Yeah, so it kind of started out with, I don't know who you are. You're up and walking around and now you're back and what's going on? I didn't know you associated with people like Crowley and his sort of like questionable morals. He was about to kill this
Hmm.
kid. And then it moved into like, how could you work with Mr. Nobody? Like
Oh,
he's
yes.
pure
Okay.
evil. So yeah, it sort of went through this weird like, gray area, and then it shifted into like Vic thought was black and white. And then it sort of ended there with, the chief being like, "I'm sorry I disappointed you. This is what I have to do." And
Yep.
then the next scene was like Vic being like, "All right, let's go." So,
Yep. So I don't think we talked about it. I feel I keep looking for it in your things because I had seen it somewhere.
mm,
Um, but it is about this, what's right regardless, the outcome outweighs the
oh
means
yeah,
kind of
yes.
thing in any situation,
So it's
and it's
on the
always a
previous
great.
page of your cursor. I can see where you're at.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
it's a couple under your notes on the second episode, that episode 5 there. It starts out with kill one to save 7 million boys, because Crowley, of course, is talking about killing Elliot, and Rita and Vic are like, how could you
Hmm.
contemplate killing this boy? And Crowley's like, it's one boy to save
Yep.
7 million boys just like him. So, you know, it's
Yep.
sort of like very Machiavellian logic. Like, does this end saving the world justify the means killing this boy?
Yep. I mean, you remember the Doctor Who episode where the doctor goes back in time and there's this boy
Mm.
that's asking for help and stuff, and that boy is Hitler.
Yep.
And so it's the question of, well, do you kill him and
Yeah.
save all the or not? And it's a similar kind of thing. Obviously, what the Doom Patrol's faced with is different because you have to kill someone that is, for all intents and purposes, for all you know, is and has been innocent.
Right. A decent person. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, we don't know what he will become.
That's very
Just
true.
as the child in Hitler in this circumstance in Doctor Who, we don't really know what he'll become either. I mean, in
Right.
that moment, the potential for him to become anything is still there, like is not set.
Well, and yeah, we don't really know what he's done either.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like, in both instances, like in Doctor Who, like he's still a child, like Hitler's still a child. We don't know that like he's done terrible things up
Yep.
to this point. So it's like
So
Elliot's sort of the same way in Doom Patrol. We don't know that he's done terrible things up to this point other than just like believe in the cult that his parents, you know, raised him to believe in.
yep.
So, I mean,
So
if
what's
we
the?
knew
I
that
mean,
in the future he would like kill millions of people actively versus in this case he's just like unlucky that he got chosen to be the unwritten book and
yep.
is going to bring about the apocalypse through no active choice of his own. Like, does that
Mhm.
make a difference?
Yep. It's it's a good test of principle
Yeah.
to like to find out which way you come down.
Mhm.
I mean, it's really and it's because it's really difficult. I mean, the logical mind would say that, of course, it's one life to save 7.5 billion. That's not even a difficult choice. A
Mhm.
machine that was there to make a choice would, of course, make that decision.
Right.
There's not. Um, I guess the other question though comes in: do you have a right to make that decision?
Mhm.
You know, and are you willing to um, violate someone else's right to life
Mhm.
to make that decision?
Yeah.
It's hard. What do you think? I mean, it's hard to come down on.
On the
It's
side. Yeah.
illogical. Yeah, it's hard to come down on and say it's illogical to um, to kill them.
Yeah.
It seems like the right thing to do, but again, I come to you don't know the future,
Yep.
especially if a guy in the situation, if a guy were to come in and say this is what must happen, this is what, and this weird guy,
Right, you don't know
how do you
him.
know? Yeah, you don't. You have no idea, and
Yeah.
you might. Um, I don't know. What do you think? What would you have done?
Um, yeah, it's so tough to know. I mean, on the one hand, I see how it could be easier to make the decision in this sense for like, you know, a member of the Doom Patrol or for Crowley because they don't know this kid really. You know, I think of so I watched The Good Place,
Mm-hmm.
NBC's The Good Place, which if you haven't seen it, anybody out there, watch it. It's so amazingly good. And they deal with these amazing philosophical questions. And there's an entire episode devoted to this very idea, this very like predicament where, you know, would you kill one to save the many? And they go through different variations of like, well, what if that one was a loved one? Or,
Mm-hmm.
you know, what if that one was Hitler? Or, you know, they kind of run the gamut of, you know, how hard would this choice be for you and what contextual factors maybe influence your decision.
Yep.
So I have to imagine that in this instance it would be easier to do the logical thing and not necessarily like, maybe the moral or emotional thing, and,
Mhm.
sacrifice this boy that they don't know. Yeah, the trolley problem. Yep. Thank you, Alan. Yeah.
Yeah, and sure you know you could say, all right, do the moral thing, but is it moral to
Right.
condemn
Yeah.
7.5 billion people to death?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, it depends on, where we're placing the line of morals, in the sense of like, is it moral to kill at all?
Hmm.
So it's hard, is it like moral to make a sacrifice in that sense, because you're saving, like, how many lives, and you're preventing mass murder? Yeah, it depends on the wording to the way you
I
view it.
I think I would have to say that the right thing to do is to not kill the boy, but it would be a test, and I can't guarantee that that's what I would do in
Mhm.
a situation.
Yeah,
That's
I
that's
uh
how I come down on it.
I actually really related to Rita in this instance, and sort of felt like my reaction would be a lot like her reaction. Um, Not necessarily in the like, we're gonna, I'm having a moment and I'm doing the
Pick
right
up all
thing,
these
damn it.
beats.
I definitely would do that for sure, especially if he was being like a whiny little brat and this was like a thing that could maybe help. I'd be like, get over yourself, you little shit. Um, but when they're together on the bench and she's talking to him and she's just like, you're just a person, and like, we're gonna do whatever you want, and like, I'm gonna
Mm,
be here for you. I feel like that would be very me, in the sense of like focusing on this person in front of me's immediate emotional needs, and sort of like, she sort of conveniently ignores the problem of, if this guy lives, maybe, 7 million people will die. But she's like, what can I fix? I can fix this boy's feelings. He's right in front of me. That's
mhm,
what I'm going to focus on.
mhm,
So I don't know that that's necessarily the most practical, thing to do in that moment, but it would probably be my reaction.
mhm. Yeah, boy, it would be a test. I'm just,
Yes, for sure.
and this is coming from someone that like isn't religious, so I'm not like
Mhm.
looking at
Same.
a judgment. I'm
Mhm.
looking at from myself.
Mhm.
What can I sustain? What can I live with? How would that go? Like if you did, ultimately you probably only have moments. If you
Yeah.
save this kid and then everybody else is going to die, well, then you're going to die too. But
Right.
and then you can die knowing you did the right thing, and the
That's
human race is gone
the
now.
right thing. Yeah,
I don't know.
don't ruin my
Yeah.
moment, damn it. I did the right thing.
Yeah. Yep. Um, I like it. It's I like those little things.
Mhm.
Um, thought exercises. Ashley's video game. Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Now she
Mhm.
loves dealing with. They say Socrates, but Socrates. And you take quests from him and different things, and he always
Sure.
likes to throw at you little moral conundrums for
Sure. That's
your
kind of
thing.
fun.
So you have to, yeah. So you can decide how you wanna play it out. And like the last one I saw was, um, he says there's this prisoner. Said where the prisoner is, where he's being kept, and he's a prisoner because he's a rebel against the authorities in his land or whatever, and
Mhm.
he's trying to fight for the freedom of his people. And in the process of trying to get whatever he killed a guard,
Mm.
and so he's been thrown in prison. And so, well, do what you with you will. He doesn't say I want him released, or go
Sure.
kill him or what, just like, it'd be interesting to see what you do about it, or
Sure.
what and so she went first and then um freed the guy right away, and in the process, of course, because it's a video game, killed a bunch of other people to get him out. Um but he was a little bit crazy. He was
Okay.
pretty fanatical, and definitely we gotta get these people out of here. And he didn't mind spilling blood. He's like, I clearly you'd love spilling blood on this holy soil like I do, And so you're going through
Yikes.
this thing and getting him out, and you're like, oh man, I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't have killed those other guards and let this guy out now.
Yeah.
Because that's the reality. You don't know what this guy is, like. And then, so he's gonna go and steal some stuff for his revolution or something, and she says, I can't let you do that, and then kills him anyways. And like, well, that was a waste of time. And I said, oh, that's interesting, you just killed him. I mean, because ultimately he just wants his people to control his land, his city, and stuff. He doesn't want, he says, the Spartans want the land for Sparta, and the Athenians want the land for, Athens. And like, I'm just tired of it. It's our place, like, get out or whatever. And so he just wants to, control his own destiny. And so she's like, now you're making me second guess my choice. And so she went back then and like let him go. And so, she cheated. And
interesting.
Went back to save point. And so we'll see what happens now or whatever. But either way, it's one of those situations where you can't feel necessarily great about either choice.
Yeah. Well, and I think
to make you struggle with it.
Yeah, I think in that particular case, it's interesting because I feel like we feel that people with similar moral compasses to us are maybe more worth saving. So like in that particular instance, like this guy is clearly like fanatical and is like, I don't mind spilling blood. And you're like, that immediately to me was like, ooh, like pause button, like, But if he'd been like, oh man, I really regret this and I'm so torn up about it, I still feel like it was the right thing, but it was awful and I don't want to do it again if I don't have to. It's like, then he automatically feels like more worthy of saving, and you feel like I made the right choice because this guy has a moral compass where my moral compass is.
Yep. It's very intentional in the game because you think, okay, someone locked up, someone that's been imprisoned. I'm going to free this person because they shouldn't be in prison. And you go to him and then you're like, oh, this guy's kind of a jerk, So you're like, well, maybe he shouldn't be, he's a little bit crazy. Maybe he shouldn't be around. So then you kill him. But when you think about what his goals actually were, despite the off-putting persona
means
and the and the preference for being okay spilling blood, like the goals might be so it's like they're trying to play on your emotions here. You're gonna think, man, this guy is off-putting, this guy likes killing people, we're gonna get rid of him,
right?
But then you think about so it's like I say, you can't win and you can't know. You let this guy, I mean, and that's ultimately the for me the call would be for justice, like you have to go through your court system and like have, I mean, that's the point of why you can't just have vigilantism. But
well, I mean, it kind of circles back around to what we were talking about earlier. It's again very Machiavellian philosophy. Does the end justify the means? And I feel like we both think not always. Like,
no,
it's, I mean, you understand what the end is, but that doesn't mean like you're okay with the means.
Yeah, for me, I am very probably a lot more dogmatic about it than a lot of people, where the means, I don't want to say the means is the end, but the means is what's important.
Yeah, the point. Yeah.
The end will be what it is. Like if you're always trying for a certain, and obviously this is like, if you're trying to build a house, your end is building the house. And so your means is just building the house. Like it's a pretty basic thing. But if it's
did you steal money? Did you steal supplies to build that house? Like,
exactly. Yes.
Are you building it on somebody else's land? Like, yeah.
Right. No, it is about the means, and you need, that's why like such a foundational grounding in a principled understanding where your principles are and your morality sits defines your means, and that will ultimately define your end.
Yep.
And you can't go about the other way or you get into trouble.
Yep.
So, let's see what else we got here. A
I
little off
just
topic, but I like the themes here. So
yeah, exactly. I think these two episodes were really fun because we got to some like deeper themes. The way that this, the whole like cult fanaticism for
right.
evil and for good was kind of set up was really
Mhm.
interesting to dive into and to see, how we view it in terms of like, this way might be evil, but in this sense, like we had to fight, faith with faith and not just like, the normal everyday concept of faith, but like fanatic level faith.
Yeah.
And sometimes like
Yeah.
this was like a tool for good in the sense of like we built the cult of the recreator to undo the evil of the decreator.
Yep. So that's
So
interesting. So it's again, like I guess it's not. Well, what's interesting about these cults is they actually
these fake cults.
were true. I mean, they came true.
Yes,
Like
indeed.
there
Yeah.
was.
Obviously,
So
a lot of cultism is like believing in things that, don't come to pass.
yeah, so it's kind of an interesting element there. How you think it's unjust to, or would seem reprehensible to create a cult in order to,
hmm
like, get a bunch of followers in this hocus pocus bogus thing or whatever,
Yep.
but it actually resulted in something,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's
It's
like
very
really
different.
more
Like,
speaking.
yeah,
Yeah, you're
normally like the
inventing
cult
truth.
leader is like the one who benefits in some,
Yes.
material way. And in this case, it's like, nope, like no, there's no real leader. Although, I mean, I guess Dr. Harrison was the leader of like the
Yeah.
recreator, but she didn't really benefit in any sort of fashion. So
Right. Other than flexing her superpower.
yes.
But
And her
yeah,
acting chops.
yeah, yes, yep. I thought it was a funny moment where her followers are questioning, like, no, that doesn't make sense. Like, how
Yeah,
could we do this instead? I
it was
mean,
like
that
team
seems a
building
little.
a cult.
Yeah, uh-huh.
Team
It's
building
like the game,
exercise.
like the
Yeah.
game Cult, kind of. Yeah.
Yes, for sure. But it was fun, like, they kind of set up all these things that needed to happen, and then, like,
Yep.
the episode really built on them in fun ways, and then, she was like, "You, my followers, like, you specifically, this one person has this really important job, the rest of you just need to dance." But then they end up
Yeah.
dancing to the song, "You Can Ring My Bell,"
Yep.
which is, like, integral to understanding, the trigger for this prophecy. I don't know. I liked it all. It all came together so well. It was so clever. Could tell the
Yep.
writers were having fun with it. Like, what if we do this? And then this person says this, and then we could do this. Like,
Yep.
it just felt like joyful in a sense.
Yeah.
So
It
it was really
was.
fun.
You're right. It's like timey wimey in a very joyful way. It's
Yeah.
not. It's not demand. It's not ask. It's not suggesting that you overthink how
Yes.
this is going down.
hmm
It's going about it pretty quickly, and you have to make some leaps, but it
hmm
plays with some conventions we're kind of familiar with, and we can go with
Yeah.
it. And yeah, a lot of fun connections. I love the lady smoking with the oxygen tank,
She was
the
so
cult
great.
member, and kicks the oxygen tank away and shoots it and stuff. And
Yeah.
that's good. It's good
Yeah,
stuff.
she was kind of fun because she seemed so normal at the end there, She was like,
Hmm.
she's facing down these, decreator cult people in Nurnheim, and she's like, I only worship Bruce Springsteen. But then at the end, she's like, the recreator, and you find
Yeah,
out she's really still a believer. So that was kind of fun,
yeah.
just to be like, oh, like a slice of normalcy.
I love the little
So
nod to L. Ron Hubbard. Uh,
yes.
I thought that little quip there, that was good.
Yes, that was the other thing I kind of wanted to. I don't know what else we might want to say about the episodes, but I did want to, before we wrap it up, bring it to Mr. Nobody, who reappears in
Oh
this
yeah.
episode after taking a break. Like, I didn't even
Hmm.
notice last episode, and then the episode started off with Mr. Nobody narrating again. I was like, "Oh my god, right. You. Hey." So, I don't know. I didn't miss him at all, I guess, in the fourth episode, but I was glad he was back because he was a
Yep.
lot of fun here, and it was fun to see him, like Crowley says, make a strange bedfellow in light of the apocalypse with the Doom Patrol.
Yep. And this is again a very to my eye at this point, a very Professor Xavier Magneto relationship.
Totally.
Clearly a thing of the past. They are nemesis, but also you can tell like they have a history,
Mm-hmm.
and some level of respect, maybe. I don't know,
Yep.
but yeah, and there's even stuff like that the chief can walk now again in
Yeah.
this moment, presumably thanks to Mr. Nobody.
Right.
But Professor Xavier in a segment of X-Men, he gets dropped off in the Savage Lands,
Mm-hmm.
and things are different there, and a bunch of like stuff doesn't work or whatever. But
Right.
so he has no powers, he has no uh, ability to read people's minds and such, but he can walk.
Right.
Um, so here we get him back now doing this too. So
Well, I was gonna say, like, the chief seems sort of diminished in the eyes of the rest of the Doom Patrol when he's walking. Just very much the
mm,
same. You know what I mean? Like
interesting.
they all question him and they're like, "You're not the chief, and what is this? And you're not the guy I know." So he does seem, it seems to be parallel,
I
with
will
Professor
say
X's
that they're
experiences, even if
yeah,
it's not direct. You know what I mean?
yep, yep. I will say they seem like the goodbye was interesting. How he
Yeah.
said, and Vic messes up his arm. So what was with that? Like he was so desperate to not have his arm
Yeah.
fixed and call for repair. Like, is it
I
just a not wanting the dependency on his father kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, I also wasn't sure about that. That seemed a little, I don't know, too significant for it just to be, I don't want to talk to my dad.
Yeah,
Like,
or if it was gonna hurt, or
right. Or it was going to malfunction, or he's going to have
mhm,
issues with, the way his technology works in the coming episodes. I'm not sure.
yeah,
So that'll be interesting to see next episode then, the
yeah,
consequences of whatever that is. Because obviously
yep,
Cliff pushed that little button to call his dad, but he declined the
yep.
call. So I don't know if his dad is on his way or not. But yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I definitely would say that these guys are messing. I mean, still is exemplified even further with Mr. Nobody every time how these guys are messing around with someone that in a completely another league.
Mhm.
So it's I like that the threat seems insurmountable.
Yeah.
Does not seem possible for them to save the chief and defeat Mr. Nobody at this point in
Yeah.
time.
I agree. Um yeah, and I think, they constantly sort of question the idea of, like, that they're heroes. They're constantly saying,
Hmm.
we're not heroes. What is a hero? And you can't, it's just a word and a label. And I don't think we've done anything that's heroic. So it's kind of fun that, like, they constantly downplay themselves. And I feel like this is kind of right for where they're all at right now. They're growing, but they're not.
Yeah.
They don't want to take up a mantle. Whereas like
So
Cyborg is all about that mantle.
right. Yeah. So why does Mr. Nobody set in Jane's mind Doom Patrol?
I don't know. I loved it so much because it was like,
I
"Ah, they
know.
said it. It's like the
Yep.
title. It's so great."
Yep.
But I don't know what that is.
Hmm.
It's
Yeah.
it's clearly
What's
something
the motive
different to
there?
him, even if
Hmm.
it is still that group, or maybe it's something different and they sort of
Yeah.
adopt it as them. I don't know.
I mean, again, if you're a god or you fancy yourself a god, I mean, you just have fun playing with the anthill, I guess.
Yeah,
You
for
know,
sure.
so maybe that's what it is. But you
Can I
think
plant something in
on
Jane's mind? Yeah.
yeah, can I play and like kind of have fun with these guys now and
Mhm.
further, are they not necessarily I'm out to kill them, but just I don't know. If there's a respect now in some
Yeah.
fashion, I don't know,
Mhm.
but it's interesting. I like the balance of answers versus questions.
Yes.
There's
Uh,
definitely that's a tough thing sometimes, and it's enough questions to keep you asking them and wanting to move forward. has enough answers to not get frustrating. So
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I'm liking the show more and more as we get into it. I mean,
nice, good.
the first couple episodes were good. But like these two really like were so solid for me and so well done. This was
Hmm.
just like enjoyable all the way around, from humorous moments to playful, joyful kind of writing, plots that fit together well, characters that were interesting, character growth, like you
Yep.
said, a balance of questions being answered from old episodes but new questions arising. Yeah,
Hmm.
excellent.
I mean, they managed to fill in more of Jane's, give her another personality or two,
Mhm.
fill in some more of her background, and make that fit into integrally into the plot of
Mhm.
how to save the world.
Exactly.
So it's not just extemporaneous,
Mhm.
thing that's thrown in there. So
Yeah, it's not throwaway stuff for sure.
yeah. Mhm. All right. Well, anything else to say about episodes 4 and 5?
I don't think so. And I know
For good
it's
measure. Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say I know that means, if we wrap it up, it's time, for our vote, but I don't think it's gonna be a surprise which way I vote
I
this
know.
week.
I was just gonna say, like,
With
for
my
good
past
measure, we
comments.
should do it. But yeah, I mean, we should be playing like the legal clip of music in the background from Gladiator. Just
Yes.
like I forget if it's like 5% of a track or something like that you can use,
Yes. We could do
and
it.
then yeah. And just play, like quickly, are you not unattained? And then we can say yes or no. So, all right, on three, continue or not with this show. 1, 2, 3. My hands over there. Okay, there we go. All right, well, great. All right, well, maybe now we don't need to do that anymore until it comes a point where it's like, man, this show is wrecked now for some reason. If something
Sure,
happens
yeah.
where it's like this is now become garbage, then we'll have to bring it up to the quorum, like we need
That's right.
a new vote.
That's right.
So
Yeah, I mean, just because these two episodes were great doesn't mean, we can't have an episode in there that's just, total, WTF, and
yep,
they've, introduced all kinds of crazy stuff to us. So we'll see.
yep, yep. All right. Well, I should tell everybody to like and share and follow
Mhm.
and all that stuff. We're on Twitch right here. This will go up on YouTube, so follow us there. We have different playlists for our full-length episodes, our full-length bonus episodes, um, and some gaming stuff.
Mhm.
And then we're on Facebook and Twitter, and we have a website, podcastontherocks.com. And that's most of the things, I think. I
Yeah.
want to thank Killing the Flower, the band, for our theme song. And you should check them out on Instagram and on Spotify.
Spotify.
That's where you can listen
Yep.
to the stuff. Yep. And what other extra notes for people? Um, that's
Well, yeah, I think that's about it, other than, catch us Saturday for our full length episodes, or our
yep,
non-spoiler cast episodes, I should say. I don't know that our lengths are all that different, but
yep. It's meaning our full length bonus episodes
yep.
and then our full episodes. It's just yep. I mean, other people do podcasts. I mean, I see some people do podcasts every day and then they're short.
Whew.
But it does. That's a lot. That's a lot.
Yeah,
So he's gonna have to deal with our long episodes.
that's right. We
That's
have
the way
lots
it
to
is.
say, but I feel like it's interesting. Mm,
Yeah. Yeah. Let us know if you think it's
yeah,
interesting. Comment or tell us where it is, or
I
tell
could
us
be
where you.
wrong.
Yeah. Tell us what you think. Would you save the kid or not?
Yeah, that's right.
Um,
Are
what
we
would be
are we
your
totally
decision?
morally reprehensible for saving the kid and sacrificing his
Yes.
7 million?
Yep. Mhm. So, all right. Well,
All
I'll catch
right.
everybody else Saturday. Thanks for joining us tonight, and we'll see you next time.
Sounds good. Cheers.